This conference will now be recorded.
Ecco l'avviso dell'inizio della lezione. Come sempre io mi occupo della parte della chat, quindi qualsiasi domanda, difficoltà che avete, scrivete pure nella chat in modo tale che io posso poi passare le vostre domande all'insegnante. Come anche le altre 2 volte faremo una breve pausa a metà della lezione e ripeto, qualsiasi cosa tenete i microfoni disattivati per piacere e qualsiasi cosa scrivete pure nella chat. Buona lezione.
Hello everyone, nice to meet you. I'm Camilla. I'm going to be your lecturer today. We're going to discuss specific needs customer service. So whatever special needs your customers might have, I am going to start by sharing my screen with you. So you should be able to see, the start of this presentation. Okay, so let's dive directly into it with what kind of needs your customers might have. Let me move this away so I can see my screen as well. Okay, so customers with special needs. What kind of people could have special requests or specific necessities? Let's start, of course, from motor disabilities, handicapped people, disabled people with different degrees of disability. Then we have sensory or communication impairments, so maybe blind, deaf people, or simply foreigners who have a clear communication problem, maybe because they don't know the local language, or other kind of intellectual disabilities, which is number 3. As, for example, Down syndrome or other kind of intellectual disabilities. Then we've got food intolerance. There are lactose intolerant people, nuts intolerant people, allergies, and I'm sure you are all very aware of this kind of issue. Then we've got celiac disease, which is something I know very well because I am allergic to gluten, so I'm going to discuss about this. I know by experience that it can be difficult traveling and having this need and finding options wherever you go is not always sure for celiac people. Then we've got vegan and vegetarian customers, which is something I'm sure you're all aware of. It's people who don't eat dairies and animal products. So of course is another dietary limitation. Then we've got cultural differences. Of course, when people come from faraway countries, the also business culture, but personal culture can be very different. So the way we approach a tourist, a customer, can be perceived in a different way. So we need to be aware of this. And last but not least, older people, which probably would not be happy to be included in this list of special needs, but actually have special needs. And it's not a bad thing. It's simply life. It's simply what happens after a certain age. You need special care by people, most of all when you're on vacation and you just want to relax. All right, so let's continue with a visual representation of differences in needs. Let me move this away. All right. So what is necessary in the context of tourism travel is to focus on measures that ensure, as far as possible, a fully independent use of the facilities and services by all customers. What does this mean? Everybody, when we go on holiday, we just want to relax, don't think about the usual life, and it's same for disabled people or people with different kind of problems. Here we have on the right a list, which is similar to the previous one: mobility impairments, visual impairments, hearing impairments, speech impairments, mental or intellectual impairments, hidden impairments, and elderly population, as we said before. Hidden impairments could be, for example, vegan people or celiac people, but as well as people who have psychological problems, which are not so easy to understand as first glance, but of course can give people some problems in also perceiving their leisure activities. And in this, it's not a pyramid, it's a cone. We have the severe on the left, severe disability, moderate disability, and mild disability. And it gets smaller as much care as these people need. So of course, when a person, the market segment, we can speak in business terms, the market segment or the people are requiring a low and not obvious accessibility needs, it's a wider part of the population, because of course there are a lot of mobility impairments, like people who need to use canes and are not so comfortable on stairs, or visual impairments, like people who are not totally blind but are able to see but not focus, or maybe not read, but they are able to travel the world as we do, and etc., etc. And the more from mild, it gets moderate. So the more severe the problem is, the smaller it gets. So fewer people are in this category, So the market segment here requiring all kinds of accessibility needs as everybody, and so on, until we get to the smallest part, which are people who need the highest level of accessibility. So of course, no stairs, larger doors, possibility of reading stuff. For visual impairments, I'm thinking completely blind people need braille signage or things in this, or same for hearing impairments. So for example, your website should be accessible also by deaf people. So everything should be also on an audio file, not only readable, and so on. I hope this is clear, so we can move on to the next slide here. Okay, here we go. And so we continue with how can we create accessible services and facilities. Okay, let me move this again, I'm sorry. What makes a facility or a service accessible to disabled people and others? The answer to this question is not, sorry. Okay, is not straightforward, as the term accessibility is not defined in a mutually agreed way. Different factors, consumers, designers, policy markers, and different regions and countries interpret the word accordingly to their traditions, cultures, and professional practices, legislations, etc. Different interpretations and application have produced a variety of uses and of terms across the world. Of course, in Italy, where we are based now, accessibility means something. Complete in Cambodia is, of course, something else. The structures are different. Most people thinking about Italy, there are so many ancient old buildings that cannot, of course, be changed like this or restructured. The accessibility in those cases must be found in finding a different way, not changing the building itself, but finding different ways to make the building still very well accessible and available to everybody. Okay, so we move on, still talking about accessibility, on how can we do this. So, no, like this. Okay. All right, so in general, policies and practices on accessibility in Europe refer to two main aspects, referring to who the access is intended for and what can the user do in the accessible environment. Okay, so here on the left, we've got the who part. So who is this service meant to? So for all, of course, the customer should be independent with whatever disability they might have or problem they might have, and it should be equal for everybody in the end, the service, the final service. So who means independent access on equal basis, for example, not being obliged to enter by the back door by all persons with and without a disability. Of course, we've got exceptions, as I said before. The Colosseum cannot be changed too much, but we can find ways everywhere. And the what, so get there, get in and use it, whatever structure or experience you might be offering. So what refers to how easy is to approach, to get there and enter, get in the buildings, outdoor areas and other facilities, and to use building facilities and products. So you should always keep in mind who your final customer is. So try to be as much inclusive as possible, and what is the approach and what is the experience you are going to offer. Okay, try to put yourself in everybody's shoes. This is pretty much the concept here. So talking about numbers, studies indicate that over 50 million people are disabled in Europe. So it's a big part of the market. So I think it's something that in this sector should not be ignored at all. Let's read it through. Accessibility must be seen as a social right which concerns all citizens. It cannot be limited to the group of people in a wheelchair or other typical groups, people with disability, such as people with visual impairments, people that are deaf or hard of hearing, people with a mental impairment, etc., etc. All of these must be included, but accessibility applies equally to those with less visible ailments or health conditions, such as people with asthma, allergies, or people with short-term or chronic illnesses. Of course, as you well know, when you are targeting the disabled community, you are not only targeting that person, but everybody around them. And usually we go on holiday with other people. So, of course, inclusion in this case is paramount. And also thinking, like in this case, about people with other kind of conditions, problems, short-term, long-term. And again, talking about older people, also older, frail persons, families with small children, people with luggage, big and small, tall people, people handling goods are affected by poor accessibility. Indeed, everybody benefits from accessible environment in society. Accessibility generates more quality, more comfort, and more security. You should always keep this in mind and never thinking of the traditional customer, because customers and tourists come in all shapes and forms. So also the simple fact of having nice big beds can be a plus. Let's continue with accessible services. So accessibility refers not only to the built environment and physical barriers, so not only stairs or lifts. Physical access is, of course, a basic condition for giving access to people with severe mobility impairments, but accessibility is about the accessibility of websites and written documents, signage, communication, transportation, and even disability awareness on the part of personnel in the tourism sector. In short, the provision of accessible services. So I want to focus a bit more on this. Your structure or your service, your adventure, your offering is not only what you should focus on, but also what happens before this. So presenting yourself as an accessible service is very important. So starting from the website or social media, you should always consider all people, and also for your written documents, the way you check in people if you work in a structure, the communication, translation for foreigners, of course, the possibility of having different kinds of transportation for different kinds of territories, of course, and most of all, train the personnel, train yourselves, your colleagues, as you're doing now, and always be aware of being universally accessible. So accessible services are a key concept in achieving a user-friendly tourism for everyone. All right, I think this is a very important point. Continuing on this, we can consider accessibility as a chain. As I said before, it's not only the final product, but a complete chain and a complete system. Okay, so let me read it through. Accessibility is often described as a chain made up of many links. For example, to access a building requires an accessible parking space, an entrance, reception hall, meeting rooms, toilets, signage, information, etc., etc. As you can see here in the image, it's represented all around. We got to do when we travel, which for abled people might seem obvious, getting door to door, but for disabled people is, of course, far of a more difficult challenge. And as in all chains, reading here, the access chain is only as strong as the weakest link. Accessibility is highly interdependent on different stages of processes. Thus, a fully accessible city or house is not usable for wheelchair users if it is not possible for them to get there. An attraction park is not accessible if the public toilets do not include an accessible facility. A museum is not interesting for blind people if they cannot touch objects or have an audio description. So for any kind of service in nature or indoor, outdoor, for your facilities, always consider the entire cycle, the entire chain, okay, not only having a suitable structure. I hope this is okay. So let's move on to the design of your structure. Universal design, a design for all. All is the key word in here. A good design is an important condition for accessibility. Buildings, environments, products, communication, and services that were designed. Sorry, I need to move this. Okay, were designed taking into account the different needs of users, do not require special actions or adaptation afterwards to make them more accessible. People refer to this kind of design with the terms such as design of all or universal design. Okay, I want to read the quote. I need to make this smaller or disappear. Okay. Ron Mace has defined universal design as the design of products and environments to be usable by all people to the greatest extent possible without the need of adaptation or special design, which is pretty much what we were discussing before. You should not destructure completely what you already have or what you did. Sometimes I'm thinking of Italy most of all, buildings could be not ancient but still old, maybe from the 80s or the 70s when these kind of issues were not a priority. So today, fortunately, they are, and we should think of the experience as the most universal as possible, and always thinking of that the design of products and environments to be usable by all people to the greatest extent as possible without the need of adaptation or specialized design. Of course, I'm not talking about the care system. We're going to talk about that later. So let's go through the designing concepts, which include these 7 principles. So the first is, of course, equitable use. The design is useful and marketable to people with diverse abilities. Marketable for you, I think, is the key word. So as I said before, just saying disabled is pretty generic and can bring people to have more questions than answers. So it's always better to explain everything and be as precise as possible when you describe how accessible your structure is or your service is. So make a list of the diversities you can satisfy. Okay. Then we've got number 2, flexibility in use, which is a design which can accommodate a wide range of individual preferences and abilities. So also thinking of dietary restrictions, if you have a restaurant in your structure or if you provide a breakfast service, always thinking, you should always be thinking of people with dietary restrictions or different cultures and different abilities, of course. Then number 3 is a simple and intuitive use. The use of the design is easy to understand regardless of the user's experience, knowledge, language skills, or current concentration level. So the use of your service, your structure, etc. Should be clear signage. You should always have signs for both blind people and big for people who are visually impaired. Also on, for example, big glass doors, something like that is always preferable. Then number 4, perceptible information. So the design communicates necessary information effectively to the user regarding of ambient condition of the user's sensory ability, which is quite similar to what we were saying before. So having a wide range of disabilities and a wide range of ways to tackle these. Number 5, very important, tolerance of error. So the design minimizes hazards and the adverse consequences of accidental or unintended actions. So you should always think ahead and be aware that maybe there could be some dangers for some people, for a category of people. So always keep in mind to maybe put a sign in a specific area to make people aware of this, or modify something and to prevent these kind of situations. Then number 6, low physical effort. So the design can be used efficiently and comfortably and with a minimum of fatigue. Of course, in this point, we're keeping in mind people with physical disabilities. So when we're going on holiday, we don't want to make that physical effort if you're not super sport oriented, but not for sure when you're getting into a structure or you are using a service. You don't want to get frustrated by it. So always consider that your service should be easy and practical to be used. And the last one, but not the least, size and space for approach and use. So appropriate size and space is provided for approach, reach, manipulation, and use regardless of user's body size, posture, or mobility. So in Italy, we don't have huge problems of obesity, for example, but in other countries it is such. So not only considering disabled people or people with and this kind of problems are using a wheelchair, but simply also a very large person can have some necessities that maybe you cannot foresee, but you should. And so always provide an appropriate space, appropriate bathrooms, and etc. etc. I think this is clear. I hope this is clear. So let's move on with another chain, the tourism chain, which is, as I said before, the way we travel. Everybody, not only disabled people. So we can start from information. So as we said before, it is very important to have easy to understand website with a lot of images for maybe people who don't understand the language or the languages you're offering the information in, clear international language or symbols for describing the services you offer, and a very simple way of booking or asking information is essential. Then offering a nice transport service for everybody. So any kind of necessity, you should be ready and aware that you might need a different kind of van or car to transport special need customers, or you should send some of your personnel to help people, and your personnel, of course, should be trained in this. Then, as we discussed before, the accommodation should be suited for any kind of necessity, and we will see that in further details later. The catering, the food, very important, as we said before, dietary restrictions, allergies, needs that your customers might have, also religious differences and cultural differences, in which maybe some people cannot eat something or cannot eat something that has been contaminated with something else. So your staff in the kitchen should be aware of this and trained for this. You should have different tools for these special customers, etc. And the attractions and the activities should be suited for your special need customers. So if your structure doesn't offer something specific, it's not a problem. You can modify your already existing activities to be suitable for any kind of customer, or in the case this is not possible, try to study a way to find an attraction in the areas or directly in your structure, or an activity that can be suitable for any kind of person with any kind or any degree of disability. And after this experience has been completed, we've got the tell the others experiences. So when we get home and we talk with our friends, with people in our community, and we describe how wonderful the experience has been, and how nice the place we stayed at was, etc., etc., which is again connected to the information, because other customers will come back to you or the same. And in the probably the most successful way of doing business is word of mouth, having people having a good reputation and talking about you. So this is how this circle closes. So we can move to a description of the questions we should ask ourselves when considering how to make the tourism chain as complete as possible. So following the links of the tourist journey, several questions rise. Information and marketing. How easy is to access information? In what format is information offered? Are websites accessible? What level of accessibility information is given? Is marketing inclusive? Does it reflect the needs and the interests of older and disabled people where appropriate? As I said before, you should explain everything, even with pictures on your websites, and have comments from previous customers, previous experiences they had, to be very accessible on your website. The information should be clearly divided in categories, and you should be, as we said before, as inclusive as possible with your marketing strategy, and never leave anyone behind. And then how easy is to book using website, by phone, or by email? Always consider the customer experience from the beginning. So is everybody able to use my website? Can anyone from wherever around the world call our phone number and be able to explain their needs? Is our email service quick, and can we give simple and direct information? Also keep in mind the cultural differences people might have. So also with replying to emails or having contacts with new customers with special needs, focus on this. And how easy is to travel from door to door? So transport, can I offer a transport, an extra transport service? And once we are at the destination, are the accommodations, attractions, restaurants, bars, cafes, and etc. accessible? How easy is to get around? What information is offered? So what can the vacation part, the holiday, the adventure part, how comfortable and how pleasant can that be, and how many options can I give, for example, in a restaurant to people with restrictions. So always ask yourselves these very important questions. Moving on to the consumers, so how to target and who to target your consumers. Let me have a sip of water. Okay, so the total group that would actually benefit from accessible tourism is a lot larger compared to the number of people with a disability. This is a very important point. People of all ages and abilities can benefit from accessible tourism. Small children benefit from being able to reach things that are placed within reach of wheelchair users. Both children and visitors who don't speak the local language benefit from use of pictograms and clear information and signs. Even visitors who are in a hurry or may have forgotten their glasses can benefit from a good signage. Improvement of the accessibility in tourism will therefore improve the quality and comfort of all travelers, visitors, and guests. It is important to mention that the target group of accessible tourism isn't limited to tourists with and without disability, but includes also people working within the tourism sector, policy makers, etc. It is clear that efforts to improve accessibility of hotels, transports, travel agencies, etc. aren't only for the benefits of the tourists. Another important economic aspect, beside from the high market segment attracted, is the creation of new employment opportunities for people with disabilities. So going back to the beginning, as we said, around 50 million people are disabled in Europe. These people have friends, family, boyfriends, girlfriends, partners, and a family. So of course they're not traveling alone. And also, as I told you, I'm allergic to gluten, I'm celiac, and I know for my experience that when I need to find a restaurant or a place to go with friends, when they are not able to provide a meal for me, they are not only losing me as a customer, but maybe all my friends. So it's always good not only to consider the social aspect of this, of the accessibility, but also the business side of the medal. And then, of course, as we said here, small children can benefit from this, older people can benefit from this. So not only the disabled, okay? And another important economic aspect is the creation of new employment opportunities for people with disabilities. Also, that is very important. So when focusing on this sector, on this target consumer, you should, or for training for your staff, you should always consider that disabled people are the best people to ask to, are the only ones that can actually know what the experience is like. So they are the best people to mentor you in this changes for your structure or your service. And I think this is it for the target consumer. Let's look at this image now. Impact of disability on holiday taking. So in this case, it's similar to the cone we have seen on the second slide. So when a person is on this side, the experience is similar to non-disabled holiday, okay, to any kind of holiday we've ever had. But the more now, how can we say, the more needy the person could be, the higher impact it will have on your service, on what you have to provide. And it might get more complicated, as we see here, for both the person asking for the service and you finding a solution. Okay, so when we are here in the middle, we've got mobility impaired with no walking aids, and then we get to profoundly deaf or blind people, which need specific aids, as we said before, and mobility impaired with walking aids, but not on a wheelchair. Their holiday experience will be depending on the availability or of disabled facility services, and which is not very difficult to provide. And then for wheelchair users and adult with learning disability or mental health problem or with behavioral problem, of course, it gets more complicated and the service might be more specialized and focused on the care service, okay? But always keep in mind that at whatever degree people are, they don't want to lose their dignity, as we have it here. So the treatment you should be able to provide should be the same for everybody. And that's why training staff is essential in this field. Because your staff should be able not to make people embarrassed, not to make things overcomplicated, because people in these stages already have a complicated life and they don't want to be patronized about it. So I think this is visually very clear, so we can move on to the actual facilities, facilities and services. Let me put it in more centered. Okay, so a person with a disability has the right to have a holiday or travel on business like everyone else. And I think this is very clear. We have already discussed this. And like other travelers, the wishes and the way they want to spend their holiday differs widely. As we have seen in that picture, the service you have to provide can change based on the needs of your customer. Disabled people should not be hindered in their choice because of a lack of accessibility. This is something disabled people complain a lot about, because of course, sometimes their only choice when they want to visit a place, a city or a town is to go to the 5-star hotel or the most expensive choice, because simply there isn't another one. And or they have to do boring activities because there isn't the possibility to do something more active or adventurous. So always consider to maybe find a way to make this kind of experiences accessible to everyone. Always keep in mind that there is not a specific type of disabled traveler. As we said, any disability is different, any traveler is different, any person is different. So don't consider all wheelchair users the same, all blind people the same, because they have different degrees of how independent they are or how much care they need. Or for example, if they have therapy animal and they need that, so always be accepting all kind of needs. Then therefore the whole range of tourism facility needs to be made accessible for a larger group of users. As we said before, we don't travel alone, disabled people don't travel alone, so consider groups, families, etc. And for certain groups, more is needed than an accessible infrastructure. Care, therapy, rehabilitation, training may be needed when away from home. And in these cases, the the customer is very aware of this, so will be able to ask you directly for this kind of services, and you should, in your structure or in local structures, be able to find this kind of special care. Continuing on this, accessible services. Physical access includes, for example, creating level access routes, possibly by means of ramps in existing venues. As we said before, with maybe very old buildings, it's not possible to change the structure completely, but with ramps, you can tackle any stairs, or adding good signage, making part of a reception desk lower to allow easy communication with wheelchair users, because that could be quite frustrating when you cannot see the people in their eyes. Installing adapted toilets and adding contrast markings to larger glass doors and windows, which cannot be seen by everybody. But accessible tourism is about more than just providing physical accessibility. Many types of facility can be made more accessible by improving the quality of service provisions. And we just have to continue with the types of accessible services. We start from information. As we said before, you should always provide accurate and detailed travel and tourism information, including information about accessibility, as well as the provision of information in accessible formats, such as the World Wide Web and digital of a large version of brochures. We are going to see later an example of a presentation of a hotel, which clearly states what kind of accessibility they can provide. Then we've got assistance, staff or volunteer assistance in specific places or for certain activities, for example, shopping, beach access, porter service for baggage, for people with severe disability. Then, as we said, special diets, for example, providing meal for people with allergies, any kind of allergy, so you should always be ready. Hire or loan of equipment. So tourism service like car hire can include adapted vehicles or additional services such as transportable electric scooters or beach wheelchairs in case you are near the sea, walking aids, etc., which are things that can also be hired or lent to customers. So maybe it's not something you always have, but knowing that you are going to receive some special guests, you should be able to hire something like this in your area. And the last one, activity packages, tourism packages that are accessible for all customers. So considering the entire experience, and not only for that person, but the person within their group and their family. So when considering which accessible service to provide, either in an existing venue or as a new venture, tourism providers are faced with the usual consideration of how much return of investment they might expect. So we're going to discuss a bit of the money aspect. The equation is intrinsically linked to market factors such as the customer segment they can attract, the number of customers over time, and how many customers are willing to, how much customers are willing to spend. On the investment side, providers must weigh the cost of providing the services, the way in which the services are packaged and priced, and the possible need for staff training. and or recurring recruiting additional staff, as I said before. So the personnel have the appropriate qualification to serve the anticipated visitors. So always keep in mind that 50 million disabled people around Europe. So of course, if you make a business plan on this segment, on this customer group, you will see that the return on investment will be higher than you expect, because with little changes and with staff training, you can have a lot of return and a lot of new customers and good publicity. So the two main strategies, I'm reading here, the two main strategies found in the way of tourism enterprises deliver accessible tourism services. Specialized provisions, which characterize those tourism offers which especially tailored to particular groups of disabled customers. Secondly, is the mainstream approach, which is to incorporate provisions for disabled people in the general tourism offers for all customers. We're going to see this in more details later. So specialized and mainstream. Generally speaking, tourism policies and practices around the world are now moving towards the position of promoting mainstream accessible provisions, if possible, specialized when necessary. So in general, you should be accessible by everyone, and in special cases, you should be able to be flexible and also provide specialized care. So I think right here we could have a little break, and then we're going to see more in details what specialized care and mainstream tourism is. So thank you very much for listening, and see you in 5 minutes. All right, here we are. Let's get back into it. So, as we said before, let's go back to the previous slide. There are two main strategies: specialized care tourism and mainstream tourism approach. Okay, so we are going to see now the specialized care tourism. The specialized tourism, or care tourism, sorry. So care tourism is for individuals and groups, institutions, organizations that requires a different approach from mainstream tourism. So severe disabled people, or people with very special needs are in this category. And as I said before, these people are very aware of this, so they will let you know when they contact you at first that they have these requirements. And of course, you should be ready and professional and able to satisfy these needs. So 40% individuals and groups do not go on holiday because of the lack of assistance or care. So as we said before, consider the business aspect of this. So 40% is enormous numbers that renounce, they directly don't go on holiday just because of these difficulties. So the market, the sector should and could definitely do more for this. And number 3, it is important to be able to rely on a safe environment, specialized care and assistance nearby. So specialized structures, or even just a retirement home nearby could be an assistance where you can find some specialized assistance. So always consider this as well. So what you have in the surroundings, not only your structure. Individuals and groups don't expect assistance from hoteliers, but would like staff in general to be trained in how to cater for people with a disability. As we mentioned, you should not be a doctor as well, or specialized stuff in this case, but just treat people as usual, as everybody, and try to help them in the best way possible. And I'm sure they will be able to explain what they need. Then people appreciate the availability of technical aids. For example, the shower wheelchair, the hoist to move more comfortably, or lifts, adjustable beds, etc. And individuals are willing to pay extra for technical aids in the hotel. Okay, so even if your structure is not a 5-star hotel or something like that, as we mentioned before, that sometimes are the only choices for this sector. If you're able to offer an extra service, it can of course be considered an extra charge, and it's not a problem. So this is what concerns the most severe cases. And then we can move to mainstream accessibility, which is the bigger part, and the one you should focus more on, because it's the other big percentage of disabled people that actually travel frequently. So they have expectations, they have requests, and as everybody, they have some needs, and sometimes they're special. So it is desirable that tourists with disabilities should have the opportunity to find their interests within the regular tourism supply, and should not be obliged to choose specially adapted accommodations, facilities, and solutions. which could be quite degrading. When considering the variety of demand types according to the variety of impairments and level of accessibility needs, probably not every accommodation and tourist facility will be able to serve all people in the best way, but they can open their premises for a huge market by improving their accessibility, even by implementing relatively simple and low-cost measures. As we said earlier, with just a ramp, you can include many people, wheelchair users, even older people with some movement impairments, with using a cane or needing a little bit more help for walking. So it's not always super costly to do these little changes to structures, or for an experience to study and to modify it a little bit to be able to accommodate a group of people or people with a disability. Customers such as older persons who are not legally disabled but require a good level of access do not see themselves in need of special services, and hence they seek to purchase tourism products for mainstream providers. Moreover, disabled people with moderate or low access needs do not feel that they should be obliged to use specialized facility that may stigmatize them, and they too argue for are due for an inclusive design and service. So when you promote yourself as a mainstream accessible service, you are comprehending families, older people, low access, people with moderate disabilities. So it's a huge part of the population. So always consider that. Moving on to what is needed, speaking about the environment, speaking about the structure. Okay, so starting from what can we find outside? Parking spaces clearly designed for disabled people, of course, but this is, I think, the law in Italy, so it's not something new. Drop-off area for motor vehicle passengers or near the front entrance. So if you are, for example, in an historical center and maybe the streets are very narrow, or in the mountains, always consider that you should have another entrance or another way where people can drop off their luggage if they have or wheelchair, and this kind of or electric wheelchair, which are even bigger and more difficult to load and drop off. And as we said before, you could also provide this kind of service, so having specialized transport offered. Then access routes that are flat without steps and with a stable surface. So not too many stairs, or always make it clear that there are steps. So a sign or another option, you could offer another option for all the categories we mentioned before. Ramps as alternative routes to steps, and handrails where necessary. It's essential and also maybe part of the law. Entrance doors with level access, sheltered from rain and well lit. Also, lighting is a very important aspect to consider for the visually impaired customer or older people, that everything is well lit and well presented. Of course, dry too, sheltered from rain is essential. Tactile and high contrast route markings, essential that all the markings are also written in Braille, so that also blind people can access it, and high contrast, so big and clearly readable by everyone, and also making it very clear what the route is, and all the steps a customer might have to face. Continuing with the environment, talking about the inside of your structure, the door handles should be easy to reach and operate, or automatic opening and closing. As we all know, this can be sometimes frustrating with the automatic one, but for some people it can be even more useful. Ramps as alternative routes to steps and handrails where necessary. If there isn't any lift in your structure, of course, you should consider ramps and big handrails. Wide doors, passageways, corridors, and space to pass between dining tables, displays, stands, etc. It is paramount to, not only for wheelchair, but first of all for wheelchair users, but also for larger people, to consider space. Not just 50 centimeters is not enough. It might be enough to an able person to move around, but not for everybody. So always consider that a larger space is needed. It doesn't matter for whom this might be, but it's always wise to have wide spaces anywhere, any passage you have. Clear turning spaces in rooms, meeting rooms, entrance halls. So of course, not having the bed too close to the table, or a chair in the middle, or always considering the experience, not only the look of the room or the place you are offering. So, and as well, as we said before, the space. So if we have to move around and be able to turn on a wheelchair, we will need more space than just turning on our own, standing on our 2 feet. Lifts, elevators in American, wide and deep with tactile buttons, of course, with braille again, signage, visual and audible indication on floors. For considering deaf people too, is a very little change, but lifts that can tell you which floor are you on, it's a big change for a person who cannot hear. Cannot see, sorry. Clear and general signage and understandable pictograms, as we said before, for the website, is very important that the signage is clear, possibly in 2 or 3 languages, but also completed by pictures, which are international and universal, and at any degree of disability or mental impairment, we should be able to understand it. Or also for children, it's very important that the signage around your structure is clear, and again, signage indicating accessible areas and features. Same with maybe an image or a stylized picture of what the area is going to offer. And last but not least, tactile and high contrast route markings. So you know where, so your customers will know where to find any kind of service around the structure. One more about the environment, considering toilets and bathrooms. You should provide support handrails beside the toilets, of course, baths and overhead showers. Free space beside the toilets for side transfer, again, considering the space. In the bathroom as well. Wheel-in shower with no step, and a non-slip floor surfaces in bathroom. Of course, this may be not be possible for all the bathrooms you've got in your structures, but you should consider that maybe 1 or 2 or 3 or more are suitable for this kind of maybe restructuring, or it's already suitable, and write this on your website because it's a plus. Okay. Then general things about the environment. You should provide sufficient lighting levels without glare or reflections that can be very disturbing for people with visual impairments. Glass door and large windows should be always marked with contrast warning signs or patterns, not only for disabled people, I think, but for everyone, because when a glass door is very clean, it's very easy to bump into it. Then easy to use window fastenings, temperature controls, etc. This one as well, I think, is more for everybody than the disabled community or the special needs customers. It should be always easy to get around and control things in our room. No smoking policy or designated no smoking zones in all service areas. Of course, this is also the law. And maybe provide smoking area, which could also be a plus. Guest rooms with non-allergenic bedding and cleaning materials. Okay, this is in the case of very severe allergies. You should have non-allergenic bedding, of course, and the cleaning materials shouldn't be toxic. And then provisions for service animals, water, toilets, accommodation, because of course sometimes special need customers have service dogs. Of course, we can think of blind people who have maybe a guide dog, but also other therapy animals might be needed, and you should be able to accommodate these needs, because it's not just like a pet. It's part of the service you should provide. So even if your structure doesn't allow pets, service animals must be accepted. Continuing on the design features, people with vision impairments benefit from logical structure of the physical environment and tactile color contrast guidelines, as well as a good signage with high contrast. So of course, logical structure means that if there's something very particular in your structure, for example, the kitchen is right next to the entrance, you should state this very clearly, not to create confusion in visually impaired people. Then children or non-native speakers and people with learning difficulties benefit from good signage with pictograms and colors to find their way easily, as we said before. People with hearing impairments benefit from good signage, as they can find their way independently without having to rely on announcements by public address systems, of course. Cleaners, delivery staff, and technical staff benefit from the lifts and slopes. So not only, as we said before, we should think of the chair, the wheelchair, but also the staff might benefit from these little changes. Moving to transport. As we said before, with the chain of tourism, transport is an essential part for special need and disabled customers. So when we are in transit, we should consider and state on the website or brochures that accessible railway stations or platforms, airports, ferry ports, waiting area, desk and check-in, cafes, etc. are accessible, as well as the toilets in transit. So if there's the need for a short stop. You can also provide this. Sufficient comfortable seating in transit or in the waiting areas, so hiring or renting specific transportation. Induction loops at reception desk and in the areas with public address system for persons with hearing impairments, so that they cannot be left outside. Physical accessibility of passengers areas in vehicles and on board ships. This I don't think is the case of our region. Space for wheelchairs and tall people. Appropriate furniture seating for very large people, playing seats, for example, etc. So even if in your waiting area or at your reception, always consider that your customers might come in any shape or size. Safe and secure system for fixing wheelchairs in passenger vehicles, where the wheelchair user remains in their own wheelchair for, as we said before, special transportation or a van or something that you can rent. Secure storage of passengers' luggage when waiting on or on the move. So taking care of their luggage if, of course, they are not able to do themselves. And the provision for service animals, so helping to take the customer take care of their service animal and provide anything they might need as well. Continuing with the transports once we are at the venue. So you should state if public transport routes serving hotels, attraction, and museum are available, or private accessible transport services where necessary, an accessible minibus, for example, or a van that you could rent for excursions, for example, to the beach or the tourist attractions, to allow tourists to make excursions during their stay. I think this is pretty clear, so we can continue with accurate and reliable information on accessible services and accessible stations or stops when we are planning maybe a tour or a trip. You will have to keep in mind these extra needs your customer might have. On-board and off-board information in multiple and accessible formats, visual and audio information, electronic information, etc. So always to keep your customers updated. Accessible arrival and departure stops, which is universal, I think, for everybody. It's important that the stops are universally accessible. Then staff and additional services for the transport sector. You should train your staff in disability awareness and client-friendly service, also when considering the transport. Special assistance available free of charge by well-trained staff for boarding and disembarking, for retrieving luggage, also in case of, for example, cancelled or delayed flights. Staff will assist with rescheduling, catering, communications. So always taking care, but not making it an extra treatment, because as you would with anybody, it's just a little bit more challenging, but it shouldn't be more complicated. Facility for service animals when traveling, of course, always thinking of these needs as well. Catering, meals available for people with allergies or special diets. There should always be an alternative for any kind of need, and we're going to see that more in detail. Smoke-free areas and smoke-free policy, of course. This is the law. Equipment and technical aids. So what should you provide in your structure. Considering a structure with bedrooms and guest room, you should have the possibility of having a choice of harder or softer mattresses, electric beds for the disabled, bed risers to help people get out of the bed in a more in an easier way, a hot water bottle or an electric blanket if people need more than just an extra blanket, bedsides for which could help like in the hospital beds, for here we are talking more about the care tourism. Remote controls for windows, lighting, the TV. So you could have a specific room or rooms where everything is controlled remotely, which could be way more comfortable for a disabled person. A telephone, of course, flashing or vibrating alerts of smoke, fire alarms, telephones in guest rooms, which is essential for deaf customers because, of course, they cannot hear an alarm. So, or also for the alarm clock in the morning. So if it is flashing or vibrating with a light or vibration, you are able also to provide this kind of service. And again, another nice slice of the sector of this sector in the market. Teletext enabled television. So again, for people with visual and hearing impairments. Wardrobe with pull-down coat hangers, of course, for people in a wheelchair who cannot stand up and take their coat from the hanger. So something that is movable and can get lower so they are able to reach. For the bathroom, a shower chair or wall-mounted shower seating. As we said before, maybe not in all bathrooms. It could be too much, but for some bathrooms, it's a very nice extra added value. Support and rails for shower, bathtub, and toilet seats. These are very common nowadays. We can see these everywhere, I think. Toilet seats raisers in different sizes, again, because not all special need customers are the same. So you should have different sizes as well. And toilet chair with a pan in most, for the most extreme cases, we can say. Then some extra things, portable induction loop. You might need that. It's always wise idea to have it, as well as a cooling fan, a fan heater, but this is part of the structure in general, air conditioning and this kind of services. Then speaking about the leisure facilities, you should have a hoist for access to the swimming pool, so that wheelchair users or physically impaired people can access the swimming pool. If you have a swimming pool, temporary access matting for beaches and pathways over soft ground. So that people in a wheelchair can access the beach, and also on a beach wheelchair you need this kind of matting to move around, of course. And for walking or short trips to the mountains maybe, or the countryside, you might need a manual wheelchair, beach wheelchair if we are going to the beach, electric scooters, 3 or 4 wheeled models. This for sure might be an extra investment, so they are also available to rent. Walking frames, also for older people and in older community, as we said before, and the baby buggies and pushchairs if we consider the entire family. So you also might need that. Moving on to an accessibility information statement. This is an example from I hope it is you are able to see it clearly. It's an example of what you should state on a website, on a brochure, to show that your service is accessible. So let's read it together. Palais Hall, I think Palais, is a Victorian building built in 1872, situated approximately 5 miles from the town of Bala. The hotel, set in 16 acres of gardens, is approached by a gravel driveway and has a large car park in front of the main entrance. It's essential here to say a gravel driveway, because this, for abled people, is no difference that it is cement, gravel, or dirt. But for a wheelchair user, for example, gravel might already be a problem. So it's very important to state this. And then we have a large car park in front of the main entrance. So this could already put people at ease. Okay, there is a gravel driveway, but I'm going to be able to access directly to the structure. Then we have to enter the building, there is one most wide step and 2 large narrow steps leading up to the main entrance door. It's a very clear and visual description of what we are going to find. So one small wide step and 2 large narrow steps. So the person can already imagine what the difficulty might be, what kind of help they might need, etc. A removable metal ramp has been made for wheelchair access. So in the case of a wheelchair, no problem. There are 2 doors to the entrance, both at 76 centimeters, both are 76 centimeters wide, and will open to a width of 153 centimeters. Essential to state this kind of information, which might seem not super important, but for some people is paramount to know if they're able to access, not only with a wheelchair, but also with twin buggy, twin for babies. you need a certain amount of space. Then we can continue. From the entrance hall throughout the main hall are 2 more doors, both of which are 102 centimeters wide and open to a width of 204 centimeters. Each door leading off the main hall into the lounges, dining room, and downstairs toilets are 102 centimeters in width. Essential. All the structure should be measured and expressed on when you present or when you make an accessibility statement. It is paramount to make, also for a visually impaired person, to make them have an idea of what they're going to find within the structure. Let's continue. Access to the downstairs toilets are accessible by climbing 4 steps with the aid of a wooden handrail. Each step is 16 centimeters high, which is very high. Any kind of stairs, steps should be expressed here. The doorway to the ladies' cloakroom, which is immediately in front of these steps, is 85 centimeters wide. The toilet doorways are 61 centimeters wide, not suitable for wheelchairs. A metal handrail is in place of both toilets. So if there are some spaces that are not accessible, on a wheelchair is not a problem if you state this. It's instead a big problem when it's not stated, and wheelchair users find this, of course, very disappointing when they have a surprise in the structure they are visiting. Gents toilets are immediately to the right of the steps through one door 86 centimeters wide and another at 80 centimeters wide. Not suitable for wheelchair again. A lift is available for access to the bedrooms. The door to the lift is 56 centimeters wide. Assistance is available at all times. Of course, another very important information to give is that there's always somebody ready to assist your customers. Several of the bedrooms have handrails to assist getting in and out of the bath. Some rooms have walk-in showers with a seat. The doors to the bedrooms are 79 centimeters and 93 centimeters wide. So as you see, everything is described in detail. The measurements are stated, and what is accessible to wheelchair and not is stated, and the bathrooms, not all have, for example, walk-in shower, but some do. So if I had this kind of need, I could just give a call and check if such room is available. Let's discuss now the common special dietary requirements. If you offer food or a meal or just breakfast, you should always consider that one option, two options, three options is not enough. You should be ready for any kind of request. So now we are going to see what are the most common, but also some more specific requests that customers might have. So sometimes it is a choice, sometimes it is not a choice. It should also be clear to you if there is an intolerance or an allergy, because the seriousness of the situations might change, and you should always inform your staff of this. Your staff should be trained for this, and not to have, of course, serious problems. So the food allergies and intolerances such as the dairy-free, fish, shellfish allergies, nut-free and gluten-free, which might give an allergic shock to your customers. So that's the worst case scenario that, of course, you want to avoid. Then we've got special dietary requirements, such in a vegetarian diet, a vegan diet, or a diet during pregnancy. And then we've got religious reasons. Some people who eat halal or kosher, and of course have special requests for that. So what you should offer, or what you can put on your menu, is that you have a gluten-free option, dairy-free or lactose-free, or directly vegan or vegetarian. FODMAP, which is for colon problems, related problems, intestine problems that people might have. So they have a specific needs, dietary restrictions. Tree, nuts, and peanut allergies, which are very dangerous, as much as fish and shellfish allergies, where also contamination might be a very serious danger. And then the ketogenic diet, other kind of diets that your customers might be following. So let's see some religious dietary restrictions and guidelines you should follow. So which is something we don't know, we have to get informed. So, for example, the Islamic diet, they have an halal diet. This Muslim diet dictates that only meat from animals slaughtered under strict guidelines is allowed to be eaten. Pork is famously forbidden, as alcohol is. There are also some strict guidelines for fasting during festivals, specifically Ramadan, but this won't affect you as a business, of course. So if, first of all, I want to say that is never bad to ask, okay? So always ask your customers what they prefer, as you should know, if they follow an halal diet, pork probably is not even considered, and alcohol too, but you can ask and maybe they are not so strict. Same goes for the kosher diet, the Jewish diet, and kosher food. Pork and shellfish are commonly known to be forbidden with a strict kosher diet. Only meat from animals that have been ritually slaughtered are suitable sorry, for consumption by observant Jew. Another big consideration of the kosher diet is that the mixing of meat with milk is strictly forbidden. So, of course, if your chef knows this, can make special dishes, or you can find on the market ready ingredients which are kosher, and you should always have them at hand. Then we got Hinduism that usually follow a lacto-vegetarian diet, so no meat, no eggs, but milk and other dairy products are accepted. Beef is not consumed as the cow is sacred. There are several fasts during the year with specific restrictions, such as only eating plants. So, as I said before, better to ask. Then for Christians, the dietary requirements can change. In Italy, not so much, but it's always better to ask. And Sikhism is generally like Hinduism, lacto-vegetarian diets. Then there are also other religious groups that you should keep in mind that are maybe not so common, but you could find yourself in these situations. To have, for example, a Mormon customer, who are forbidden from consuming alcohol and caffeine, or a Rastafarian client who has a Ital diet, so they are allowed to eat food that is lightly cooked. No meat and no canned produce. So they might have specific requests that, of course, you will be able to provide. Then also Buddhism sometimes is connected to veganism or vegetarian diet, but it's not so strict. And last but not the least, Jainism follows strict rules for the protection of life forms. So they don't eat meat, poultry, fish, or eggs, any kind of dairy products. And they prefer maybe raw dishes, raw food. Okay, so how can you meet these requirements concerning food? First of all, reviewing your menu. So always state that you have other options. Be mindful of cross-contamination. As I said before, your staff should be aware that in certain cases, contamination can be very dangerous. Create new menu offerings. So maybe have a gluten-free menu or a vegan menu, which can be a very added value for a vegan or gluten or celiac customer to receive directly a menu created just for them. expand your vegetarian and vegan dishes because that's the future. So also focus on that. Educate your staff on this. Publicize this because also the vegan community, it can give you a lot of nice word of mouth contacts, and as well always be open to feedback. So always ask for feedback to your customer, and always be aware that there are ways to improve. Last but not the least, cultural diversity. I listed here 5 best practices for serving diverse customers. So you should know your clientele, try to get to know them. Number 2, seek out culture-specific knowledge of your customers. So for if they are coming from a very distant part of the world, maybe try to find out something about that. Number 3, recognize patterns for communicating. So be aware that, for example, tourists from Japan will not like physical contact or a very direct way of communicating as is common here in Italy. So always be conscious of these differences. Number 4, attract diverse customers by having a diverse workforce. It's very important also to have a diverse workforce to attract diverse customers. And last but not the least, build relationship so that your customers will come back. And remember here, I put a little reminder that good customer service means different things to different people. So there's not just one way and we are the best because we do this in this way. This way might be the best for one customer, but you might have to change that for the next customer you will receive. And thank you for your attention. It's been a pleasure. I left a couple of minutes here to ask if you have any questions or experiences you might want to share with us. I'm here for this. All ears.
So I would really like to say thank you for this lesson. I think it has been very complete. And first of all, you managed to summarize a whole course about inclusive tourism we had last year. I also want to say that this course is still available on our web, on our YouTube channel. So if somebody is interested in it, it's available.
Some extra
but really,
material.
You managed to summarize it all, and I think that we have so many words we can learn, so many ideas, so useful ideas, and so it was really great. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it, and thank you everybody else for listening. There's a lot of people. It's been a pleasure, and it's been very interesting searching for all this information and preparing this material for you. I hope it will be useful. Thank you, Sergio. You can see the chat now. Thank you, Tiziana. Thank you, Chiara. I feel like a YouTuber. Thank you to everyone. So thanks again. Bye-bye and see you soon.
See you. Bye-bye.
Benissimo. Vedo dei ringraziamenti nella chat. Spero sia stato tutto chiaro e soprattutto molto utile per la vostra formazione. E vorrei ricordarvi il prossimo appuntamento. lunedì prossimo, sempre alle 14:30, Building Client Retention, sarà con Tina e andremo appunto ad approfondire questa parte. Spero di vedervi presto. Buona giornata.
Arrivederci la settimana prossima.
Bye. Thank you.